Have you ever pondered over the phrase, "turn the other cheek"? What does it truly mean? This saying, often heard in various contexts, has a rich and profound origin that we're going to explore today. This phrase hails from a time long past, finding its roots in the sacred text of the Bible, specifically in the book of Matthew. There it is part of a much larger narrative, a teaching from none other than Jesus himself. It's a phrase that has been passed down through generations, carrying with it a depth of wisdom that transcends time itself. Over the years, "turn the other cheek" has been interpreted in myriad ways by scholars and laymen alike. Some see it as a call to passivity, a directive to accept harm without retaliation. Others view it as a challenge to the traditional notions of revenge and retribution, a radical departure from the eye for an eye mentality. But the question remains, what did Jesus truly mean when he instructed his followers to turn the other cheek? Was it a call to passive acceptance, or was it a far more nuanced teaching, one that encourages not just non-violence but a transformative approach to conflict and injustice? In the book of Matthew, Jesus uses this phrase as part of a larger discourse, a teaching that reshapes relationships, restores harmony, and challenges the norms of retaliation. It's an invitation to break the cycle of violence, to seek justice not through further harm, but through love, generosity, and the assertion of one's dignity. This is a phrase that resonates with many, a phrase that has found its way into our daily lexicon, often used without fully understanding its profound implications. Today we're going to delve into this fascinating phrase, unpack its meaning, and explore its significance in Jesus' teachings and its relevance to our lives today. So, let's dive deeper into this intriguing phrase and its profound implications. To fully understand this phrase, we must first look at its biblical context. In the book of Matthew, Jesus delivers a sermon on a mountainside, a discourse that has come to be known as the Sermon on the Mount. Here, he addresses a multitude of topics, offering wisdom and guidance on various aspects of life and spirituality. It's within this sermon that Jesus utters the phrase, "turn the other cheek." This saying is part of a larger teaching on non-retaliation and love for enemies. Jesus is addressing the age-old concept of an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth, a form of justice that was prevalent in many ancient cultures. This principle dictated that punishment for a wrong should be equal to the harm inflicted. However, Jesus challenges this notion of justice. Instead of advocating for retaliation, he promotes a radical form of non-violent resistance. He says, "But I tell you, do not resist an evil person. If anyone slaps you on the right cheek, turn to them the other cheek also." It's essential to understand that in the cultural context of the time, slapping someone on the right cheek was not only a physical attack, but also a profound insult. It was a gesture of disrespect, intended to degrade and humiliate the person on the receiving end. By instructing his followers to turn the other cheek, Jesus is not suggesting that they should passively accept abuse or wrongdoing. Rather, he is encouraging them to respond to harm with love and generosity, to refuse to participate in the cycle of violence, and to assert their dignity in the face of insult. In the same sermon, Jesus goes on to say, "Love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you." He is teaching his followers to transform relationships and restore harmony by inviting transformation in both the victim and the perpetrator. It's a call to break free from the cycle of revenge and retaliation and to seek a higher form of justice that is rooted in love, mercy, and reconciliation. This teaching was revolutionary for its time and remains challenging today. It calls for a radical rethinking of our natural instincts and societal norms, urging us to respond to hate with love, to answer insult with dignity, and to meet violence with peace. With this context in mind, we can begin to see the deeper meaning of "turn the other cheek." Now that we know the context, let's break down the phrase, "turn the other cheek." At a glance, this phrase might seem like a call for passivity, a plea for submission, or even an invitation for continued harm. But let's take a closer look. The phrase, "turn the other cheek," is a metaphor, a richly layered expression that invites us to move beyond literal interpretations and begin to understand it in a broader context. So, what does it mean to turn the other cheek? In simple terms, It's about responding to harm or aggression, not with retaliation, but with love, generosity, and a creative form of non-violent resistance. Sounds a bit counterintuitive, right? Well, it's meant to be. It's about challenging the traditional, visceral responses to harm. It's about breaking free from the instinctive reflex to hit back when hit, to return harm for harm. In essence, it's about transforming our reactions into actions that can reshape relationships, restore harmony, and even invite a transformation in the person causing harm. Picture this. You're standing in front of someone who's just struck you on the cheek. The natural instinct would be to strike back, right? But what if instead you turned the other cheek? What message would that send? It's a bold, non-violent way of saying, I won't retaliate with harm, but I won't be intimidated or silenced either. It's a statement of dignity, resilience, and courage that refuses to be drawn into a cycle of violence. This is not about endorsing harm or encouraging victimhood. Far from it. It's about refusing to perpetuate a cycle of violence and harm. It's about standing firm in one's dignity and asserting one's worth, not through violence, but through an act of peaceful defiance that communicates strength and resilience. It's also about inviting transformation. By responding to harm with non-violent resistance, we offer the other person an opportunity for self-reflection, a chance to reconsider their actions, and perhaps, just perhaps, a chance to change. It's important to remember that turn the other cheek doesn't mean do nothing. It's about active response, not passive acceptance. It's about choosing to respond with love and generosity over retaliation and revenge. It's about choosing to be a peacemaker over being a peacetaker. So, when Jesus says, turn the other cheek, he's inviting us to a higher standard of response, a more mature way of dealing with harm or aggression. He's calling us to rise above our basest instincts and choose a path of non-violent resistance, a path that has the power to transform not just us, but those around us too. So, turn the other cheek is not about allowing harm, but about responding to it in a way that breaks the cycle of violence. Knowing this, how can we apply the concept of turn the other cheek in our daily lives? This question, my friends, carries the essence of our discussion today. The practical implications of this phrase are as profound as the spiritual ones. They guide our responses to harm or injustice, not just in our personal relationships, but also in our communities and on a global scale. Firstly, let's delve into our personal interactions. We all face conflicts, disagreements, and sometimes even downright hostility in our lives. It's an inevitable part of human interaction. Now imagine if, instead of retaliating with the same energy, we chose to respond with love, understanding, and generosity. This isn't about accepting abuse or wrongdoing, but rather about asserting our dignity in a non-violent manner. It's about inviting transformation in both ourselves and the other person involved. For instance, if we are faced with rudeness, we can choose to respond with kindness. If we are faced with anger, we can choose to respond with patience. This act of turning the other cheek isn't passive. It's an active choice to break the cycle of violence and negativity one interaction at a time. Moving on to a broader spectrum, let's consider our communities. Conflicts often arise due to misunderstandings, prejudices, or simple lack of empathy. Turning the other cheek in such situations means actively working towards reconciliation and understanding. It means standing up against injustice, not with violence or aggression, but with peaceful resistance and constructive dialogue. Imagine a community where everyone chose to turn the other cheek. It would be a place where problems are solved through conversation and empathy, not through hostility or violence. A place where every individual's dignity is respected and upheld. Finally, let's think globally. Our world today is rife with conflicts, wars, and injustices. Turning the other cheek on this scale means advocating for peace, justice, and equality. It means standing up against oppressive systems and practices, not with more violence, but with non-violent resistance and advocacy for change. It's important to remember that turning the other cheek is not about accepting oppression or injustice. It's about challenging and transforming these harmful systems in a peaceful and dignified manner. It's about recognizing the humanity in everyone, even those who harm us, and inviting them into a space of transformation and healing. So let's reflect on this concept not just as a biblical instruction, but as a guide for our daily interactions and responses to harm or injustice. Whether it's in our personal relationships, our communities, or on a global scale, turning the other cheek can lead us towards a more peaceful, just and harmonious world. Through turning the other cheek, we can contribute to peace and justice in our world. Despite its profound message, the phrase, "turn the other cheek," is often misunderstood. Let's dispel some common misconceptions. Many interpret this saying as an invitation to submit to injustice or to accept victimhood without protest. But such an interpretation could not be further from the truth. The call to turn the other cheek isn't an endorsement of passivity. It isn't about letting others walk all over you or encouraging you to become a doormat. No, it is about a much deeper and more profound response to harm and violence. It's essential to realize that when Jesus uttered these words, he was challenging the traditional notions of retaliation. He wasn't suggesting simply to absorb the blow and do nothing. Instead, he was teaching his followers to respond to harm not with an eye for an eye, but with love and generosity. This call to turn the other cheek is about creative, non-violent resistance. It's about asserting your dignity in the face of aggression and inviting the perpetrator to reconsider their actions. It's about breaking the cycle of violence and retaliation, and instead seeking to restore harmony and balance. And so we see that turn the other cheek is not a call to passivity, but rather a call to active non-violence. It's about standing firm in the face of injustice, but doing so with compassion and love, not with hatred or revenge. It's about seeking to transform not just the situation, but also the person causing the harm. And it's important to remember that this isn't just about personal interactions. It's a principle that can be applied to social, political, and international conflicts as well. It's a call to seek justice without violence, to resist evil without becoming evil ourselves. Understanding the true meaning of turn the other cheek can lead to a more compassionate and just world. It's a challenging concept, no doubt, but one that has the potential to bring about profound transformation in ourselves and in our world. So let's strive to understand it, embrace it, and live it out in our daily lives. We've come a long way in our understanding of turn the other cheek. Let's summarize what we've learned. We began with the biblical context of the phrase found in Matthew 5:39. We discovered that it is part of Jesus' Sermon on the Mount, a collection of teachings that challenge traditional notions of retaliation and revenge. We broke down the phrase, "turn the other cheek," and found that it was not a call to passive acceptance of harm. Instead, it was an instruction to overcome evil through creative acts of non-violent resistance. This is a transformative approach that aims to break the cycle of violence and retaliation that can perpetuate harm and discord. We then explored the real-world implications of this teaching. We saw that it is about asserting one's dignity in the face of harm, inviting transformation in both the victim and the perpetrator. It's about responding to harm with love and generosity, reshaping relationships and restoring harmony. We also addressed some common misconceptions. Turning the other cheek is not about being a doormat or allowing oneself to be repeatedly victimized. It's about choosing a response that disrupts the cycle of harm and retaliation, asserting our inherent worth and inviting others to do the same. Remember, turn the other cheek is not about accepting harm, but about advocating for peace and justice. So how do you interpret this phrase? Share your thoughts in the comments below and let's continue this enlightening conversation. Before we part ways, I have a small request. Let's take a moment to reflect on the profound wisdom of turning the other cheek. How does it resonate with your life? How have you seen it manifest in your actions or the actions of others around you? This isn't just a phrase, it's a call to rise above our instincts of retaliation and embrace a path of love and generosity. It's a call to reshape our relationships and restore harmony. Now, I invite you to share your thoughts. What does turning the other cheek mean to you personally? How has it influenced your journey? You see, we're all learners here, and your insights could help another soul seeking understanding. So please do leave a comment sharing your perspectives and experiences. Thank you for joining me on this journey of understanding. Remember, every step towards understanding brings us closer to peace. Until next time, stay curious and keep exploring.